Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Jordan Bateman, Vice President of Communications and Marketing for the Independent Contractors and Business Association in British Columbia. His website, icba.ca. Welcome back to the show, Jordan, and Happy New Year.
Yes, thanks, Jim. Happy New Year to you and to all the listeners. Hope you had a peaceful, restful vacation and that, you didn't sneak away anywhere so the Premier doesn't have to fire you.
Well, I don't know if they did or not. Would BC be one of the exceptions where government members didn't slip away?
BC so far, the MLAs seem fine, although I see a few city councillors of fessing up as every community newspaper reporter in the province starts calling their mayors, councillors, and school trustees to find out.
Yeah, and now, of course, if you live in the Lower Mainland or Victoria, why do you have to run away? Our weather isn't that bad.
This is exactly it. It's a big difference. Like if I was living in Red Deer or Edmonton or Fort Mac, yeah, okay, you can almost forgive them. But take it from someone who knows folks who have family in Alberta and BC. The Alberta family visits a whole lot more than the BC family visits the East.
And I remember when I was in high school, a friend moved to, I was in Peace River, that's 500 k's north of Edmonton, so that's north. And a friend moved to Victoria, and they said they were playing tennis on New Year's Day, and I just didn't believe them.
That's the classic. The big weather problem this year was a windstorm. A tree got knocked down, but don't worry, Victoria will rebuild. They'll be fine.
And in a short time, in a few weeks, they'll be doing their annual flower count.
Oh, it's that's the most obnoxious Victoria thing of all. That and, although I always love the Times columnist, really brilliant Jack Knox, who whenever they cancel ferry sailings, because of wind, will always point out that it's sad that the mainland has been cut off from civilization.
Jordan, your members of the Independent Contractors and Business Association have done their annual winter survey. What are the highlights?
Well, this year we actually did this a couple months earlier than normal. Usually we put this out in mid-February, but given what's happened with COVID-19, the economic downturn that was tied with it, we thought better to get this information sooner than later as we headed into 2021. So we have released our wage and benefits survey, and what it's found is probably the most gloomy outlook contractors have had in BC for at least a decade. What we saw in 2020 was interesting. Construction was deemed an essential service. It continued on when many other industries were forced to shut down. Despite that, there was about a 15% reduction in construction activity in British Columbia. And when you're employing 250,000 people, as construction does, when you're contributing 9% of the BC GDP, that, a 15% drop in that is significant, and it certainly hurts the economy. Despite that, folks kept working. We do forecast another 5% decline coming this year, and then hopefully with vaccines and whatnot, we see a rebound starting in 2022. Now, the interesting, Jim, is despite all that, despite business being down 15%, and despite the number of issues with COVID, wages this year, our companies are saying will go up by about 3.5%. And it really goes to show you that, it's almost like the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object. You have the unstoppable force of the pandemic running headlong into the immovable object of an aging workforce, a demographic cliff in Canada. And, even though construction was down, we are still desperately short of construction workers.
Any particular area that needs help, or is it all of them?
Well, when you break it down by trades, every single company that employs glaziers people who work with glass and windows that we interviewed, every single one of them needs more skilled trades, skilled glazers. Every single insulation company needs more insulators. Every single steel fabricator needs more steel fabricators. You know, you look at, for example, framing companies. Only 86% of framing companies need more people, and that's considered one of the better, situations. So it does show you that, like, we've got to find a way to get more young people into trades. There's a huge opportunity for young people, especially entrepreneurial ones, to get into construction. So many construction businesses are small businesses, fewer than 20 employees. But every single one of those, were started by someone who started working for someone else. You get hired as a welder somewhere, you learn the trade, you kind of strike out on your own, create your own welding company, employ a few other folks, and you grow into this bigger company on your own. And your workers then go off and start their own companies. Like, it is really an entrepreneurial business. And that's something that we maybe haven't gotten the message out fully to parents and to young people who are considering the trades as a career future. If you're an entrepreneur, you have the opportunity to make a lot of money in construction, not just when you're learning, not just when you're practicing your trade, but as a boss down the road.
Is there still a stigma attached to going into the trades rather than into white-collar jobs?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's brought on by the fact that, a lot of teachers, a lot of educators, a lot of politicians, to be blunt, a lot of university professors look down on the trades, look down on blue-collar work. And that's unfortunate, and that's something that we're trying to reverse. I think of, not to pick on him, but Dr. Andrew Weaver, university professor, became a two-term BC Green MLA and leader of that party. He would speak derisively about people who worked, in dirt jobs, who worked with dirt, worked with their hands. He was all about the skill, the innovation, the economy. And that's great, but, you still need folks who can build these places that house the coders, right? Like, you need people who can build the infrastructure to keep us safe and healthy. Construction has continued on. You need people to build the homes. Like, construction is proven in this COVID downturn, especially for workers, to be almost recession-proof, in that even if there's a 15% drop in business, we're not seeing a lot of people laid off in our open shop construction companies. Wages were basically at the rate of inflation in 2020, but the year before, it had increased 4.4%. This year, we're predicting a 3.5% increase. So there's a blip in wages for a year, but again, they climb back up. So, it's a world of opportunity if we could just, get people to consider it, to not look down on it. I mean, some of the most community-minded, frankly, successful people I know, created their own construction companies.
Jack Poole would be the best example, perhaps.
Yep, for sure. Plumbers, electricians, glazers, roofers, like, these folks go out there and they create their companies. Some of the largest companies in BC now, started off with, small shops. Beatty, for example. Mr. Beatty, now has the SFU School of Business named after him. He started with building one single house. Now it's a, multi-billion-dollar corporation with hundreds of staff and, very influential in the community. So, like, it starts somewhere, and it could start with, someone getting their Red Seal ticket, apprenticing, going through that process, and then striking out on their own.
Yeah, and when you talked about the spirit of being an entrepreneur, my 18-year-old nephew in Edmonton had his own small construction company with 6 employees, but he had to disband it because he couldn't afford the insurance.
Oh, well, I mean, Alberta is a whole different kettle of fish,
yeah.
Economically. Like, their recession was bad going into this. You compound that with oil and gas. They're in a world of pain. I will say this: one of the interesting findings in this, maybe we talk about it after the break, but there was a difference in the outlook regionally in British Columbia, and that was very interesting to see who's optimistic and who wasn't.
We'll have more from Jordan Bateman, and we'll take a look about who's optimistic and not when we return.
Avin Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avin's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avinresources.com.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, who are the optimists in British Columbia?
Well, when you look at which construction companies are expecting more work in 2021 by region, Northern BC, 56% of the construction companies there expect more work in 2021. 54% on Vancouver Island. So those are the two high water marks. And then there's a big, drop, almost 20 points. The interior of BC, 37% more work. And very concerningly for the broader BC economy, Lower Mainland, only 35% of companies expect more work in 2021 than 2020. And what we're hearing anecdotally from these companies is that tenders have slowed down. Provincial government, is delaying the budget, so we're not quite sure what kind of infrastructure spending will be in that budget. Now you're delaying it by a couple of months, so that slows it down. Municipalities are basically writing down their books from previous years, but most of them have not come to terms yet with what their budget will look like going forward. They're not allowed to run deficits, so they don't have the same option as the feds in the province. So, their tenders could be constrained for a year or two. And then you have private sector folks, investors, kind of sitting on the sidelines just waiting to see what's happening with the economy because they don't want to invest millions or even billions of dollars without knowing for sure that the economy is going to bounce back in some way. So all this is slowing down tenders, and you're especially seeing it in the Lower Mainland where it's already very difficult because of red tape and financing issues to municipal hall interference to get the approvals you need to build, say a new condo building. So it's starting to slow down. Like that number, province-wide, 38% province-wide of construction companies expect more work in 2021. That's the lowest we've seen in a decade. And that should give us all pause because if this, very dynamic driver of the BC economy is starting to slow down, that's not good. There's also been, some other news, which is, Dr. Henry and the Provincial Health Office, due to an outbreak at one of the work camps, has now slowed down the process to staff up those work camps on things like the Coastal GasLink pipeline, Trans Mountain, those big work camp projects. That's good. I mean, obviously from a health and safety point of view, we've got to do better to control COVID there. On the other hand, that will again slow the economy because those major infrastructure projects were masking a lot of the downturn that was going on.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after this.
Value from success. Growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, the real estate people tell us there's a huge demand for homes in the Fraser Valley and other areas outside of the big cities. Is that a source of optimism, more housing starts?
Absolutely. Look, Chilliwack, I live in Langley. And, for a long time, commuting from Langley to Vancouver was considered like the furthest you would possibly go. That's been broken open in recent years. Chilliwack now has a very thriving residential community. Anyone who hasn't been in Chilliwack for a long time would find it unrecognizable in places. Beautiful homes, single-family homes. Maple Ridge Pit Meadows, same thing. A number of people who grew up in Vancouver, Burnaby, New Westminster, but couldn't afford to buy their first home there, buying instead in Maple Ridge Pit Meadows. And this really goes back to, I remember being at an Urban Development Institute speech by Bob Rennie, the noted marketing guru in British Columbia, and someone who's really invested significant personal resources into research on housing and whatnot. And, his message that day was mainly directed at the media, which was, we always talk about the affordability crisis in Vancouver. But if you actually take in and consider Greater Vancouver as a whole, the crisis is far lessened. If you consider Vancouver as going, basically from Squamish to the border, from the ocean to Chilliwack, there are opportunities still there for people to get into the housing market. And, everyone kind of poo-pooed it because they were a downtown crowd and, Vancouver's Vancouver. It's got to be downtown. But, there is truth to that. We need to start thinking regionally. When I was a Langley Township councillor way back in the day, 15 years ago now, heaven help me, I'm getting old, I would often be like, why isn't the gateway, everyone talks about the gateway to British Columbia being, the ports, the airport, Vancouver itself. And I was like, no, the gateway to the Lower Mainland comes through Abbotsford and Langley, people coming, from the east. So there are opportunities there. And again, Chilliwack is almost mind-boggling in the growth that they've seen.
Should rapid transit be pushed down the valley?
Oh, heck yeah. Absolutely. Should be, this should be a major, this should be something that should have been done years ago. There's some people who say use the old interurban line that, winds its way through Langley and Abbotsford all the way to Chilliwack. I'm not sure that those are near the transportation or the density hotspots. Other people say take it right down the freeway. You've got, right of way, you could basically run the SkyTrain at grade. Whatever the decision is, we need to start thinking in that way. I'm sort of marveling at, before the COVID pandemic, the provincial government was kicking tires on, a train that would take you from, downtown Vancouver to Surrey to Seattle to Portland, a high-speed train. And I'm like, a high-speed train to Portland, as nice as it is to visit Portland, sometime, and would be even nicer now. Instead, why aren't we putting stuff through to Langley, Abbotsford, Chilliwack? Let's serve our folks first. Let's serve the thousands and thousands and thousands of commuters, people who are still commuting even during COVID, people who will begin commuting when office spaces completely reopen. We should be getting ahead of that demand.
Yes, apparently the lure of the big city is no longer there, considering a lot of people can still work from home. That's not really an option if you're a construction worker, but it is if you're an office worker for a construction company.
Yeah, absolutely. Most construction companies do have office workers. One of the things that we track in our wage and benefits survey, and our members get, can actually look by trade, by how long people have worked, credentials, all of that. They can get broken down information regionally. We look at, what do accountants make working for construction? What do receptionists make? there's a whole support staff. What do human resources folks make? What do administrators make? There's a whole support staff that happens, especially once construction companies hit, 15, 20 people, that, you have an office and that you need to, be able to get to and whatnot. The world has changed right now. Obviously, I drove in today from Langley to my office in Burnaby. Before COVID, would have been a 45, 48-minute drive, depending on if there was an accident or not. It was 32 minutes today. But there are cars on the road, and there are people going to work. It's just that it's not as heavy as it was. But at some point, we are going to have vaccines. At some point, bosses are going to start wanting their employees back in the office. At some point, the mental health issues are going to crop up, and people who have been at home working in isolation for a long time are going to be, I want to go back. I miss the water cooler talk. I miss the coffee maker, right? I do think while there'll always be some Zoom meetings and whatnot, life will return more and more to normal once the vaccines are here and in people's arms. So, yeah, we should be getting ahead of these things and thinking ahead and making sure that we're ready to go from an infrastructure point of view.
In terms of vaccination, are you disappointed that governments had months of time to get ready and yet it's such a low, slow rollout?
Yeah, very slow. I'm bothered by the fact that Canada's not first in line for any of these. Bothered by the fact that we didn't find a way to, manufacture some of these, on license from companies. All of that is concerning. I don't like that some of it's in the fridge instead of in people's arms. That doesn't make sense. I also, I look at the order of who's being vaccinated. I think we all agree long-term care, healthcare workers, absolutely. I do find it interesting that people in communal living situations are in phase one. I understand that, but the communal living situation that they referenced was prisons. Work camps was not referenced. I'd love to know if work camps are actually included in that, because the people who are contributing to the economy and building British Columbia probably should get this vaccine maybe ahead of prisoners, people who aren't contributing to this community. These are thorny questions that they have to deal with. Hopefully communal living does include work camps.
And of course, I thought because we had a general in charge of the vaccine rollout that it would be orderly and very aggressive, because that's how the Canadian military usually rocks. It's pretty passive.
Yeah, it's slow. I think part of it is I don't think they trust their supply chain, and they're worried about putting in people and then not having second doses. It's hard. I mean, everyone has a story, right? My 92-year-old grandmother celebrated her 92nd birthday January 1st. We have not seen her in 9 months. And her dementia worsens every time we speak with her on FaceTime. And, my kids are strangers to her now at a time where they could bring her real comfort. And it's awful. It's awful. In a way, I'm one of the lucky ones, because Grandma's ward had an outbreak, but she tested negative consistently and is fine. But I don't feel lucky because, I haven't seen my grandma except for a brief trip to the hospital where, her dementia was so bad that they needed a family member to come help. That is not the memory of my grandmother that I want to have. I want to remember her in her home, happy, surrounded by people who love her. The sooner we get this vaccine into her, the better. And I think that's the frustrations. A lot of us feel like we're spinning our wheels here, and vaccines were promised, and, some places, Israel is going to be almost fully vaccinated before even half of Canadians are. We're not doing it right.
Of course, every 18-year-old in Israel is in the armed forces, and hundreds of women know how to drive tanks. How come we can't train our armed forces people to give injections?
Well, that's an interesting question. And, you think of all those retired doctors and nurses who put themselves on the list to help during the pandemic. I think of former BC Liberal leader Andrew Wilkinson. Hasn't been a practicing doctor in decades, but, I'm assuming it's like using a bicycle. You don't forget how to stick a person with a needle. Are we reactivating those folks?
Yeah. What about all the medical and nursing students?
Fully medics,
lab techs.
Yeah. You think of occupational health and safety committees. They all have to go through some training. We should have been training them in how to administer injections, right? Honestly, Jim, diabetics have more experience with needles. There are people we could draw on. I had a blood clot issue a few years ago, and before I transferred onto warfarin, for the first 90 days, I had to give myself 2 needles a day. I got darn good at it, and I was glad when it stopped. I could use the pills instead. But, you learn, right? And it's a skill that can be taught. And if there's a way to activate this network of people, the government should be all over it.
Getting back to long-term prospects for construction, China and Japan cannot get their hands on enough LNG. BC has a 200-year supply of natural gas. Should more efforts be made to get us up and going in supplying Asia with their growing demand for natural gas?
Oh, absolutely. This is still one of the great markets that are available to British Columbia to grow, to really do something significant. In the Sun last week, Karen Ogan-Taves of the First Nations LNG Alliance made this very case and said, look, everyone likes to poo-poo LNG right now. Oh, prices for natural gas are so low. But, every analysis shows that prices are going to go up as the economy recovers, especially in Asia. And so, we have a choice. We have a choice, right? Do we want these Asian companies to buy their LNG from Qatar, from Australia, from Russia, from the U.S., or do we want them to buy it from us? And our colder weather in the north of British Columbia makes it easier to bring natural gas to the temperature where it can be liquefied. We're shorter shipping lanes to Japan, to China, thanks to the curve of the Earth, especially from Prince Rupert. Even Prince Rupert has an advantage over the Port of Vancouver in that way. So, there are structural advantages we have here. LNG Canada will be a massive project. It's going to reduce global carbon dioxide emissions by 90 million tons. That's like 10% of Canada's total annual emissions. They're going to create energy, these countries, whether it's through coal, whether it's through buying LNG from countries that we may or may not like, or they could buy it from us, the cleanest LNG in the world. And to me, it seems like a no-brainer.
Jordan, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me.
My guest has been Jordan Bateman, Vice President of Communications and Marketing for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. His website, icba.ca. If you have any questions for Jordan or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.